Now on Consciousness Matters. Are you hallucinating right now? Anil Seth seems to think so, but he says he's facing complete and utter oblivion. Your brain hallucinates your conscious reality. Wow.
Just over a year ago, I ceased to exist. And then I was back, and I could have been under for 5 minutes or even 50 years. I simply wasn't there. It was total oblivion. And in this process is one of the greatest remaining mysteries. How does consciousness happen?
So what he's really saying here is that anesthetic destroys consciousness. He was destroyed, well, not quite sent to oblivion, but went into oblivion. He was gone, and then he came back, like Jesus.
I ceased to exist, and then I was back.
Okay. I mean, general anesthesia certainly does point to the mystery of consciousness. He's right about that. But perhaps there are some other explanations, Anil, that might seem far more credible than the rather incredible one that you just gave. Now, if you want to talk about consciousness, you really have to talk about an experiencer having experiences. You can't really do it if you drop one of those. So, if you have an illusionist or functionalist worldview, if that's your philosophy, if that's your ideology, then you will see the body as the experiencer of the experiences, right? Your brain is the experiencer of experiences. So I guess what he's saying is that general anesthetic destroyed his brain and then it came back. Or it destroyed his body went into oblivion and then it came back. I mean, this doesn't make sense any which way you cut it, Anil. You're making a Jesus claim. Thankfully, a lot of the talk is rather good. So let's get to it.
The combined activity of many billions of neurons, each one a tiny biological machine, is generating a conscious experience.
Well, those brain cells are critically key to creating the human conscious experience. I have no doubt about that. But if we call them machines, we are assuming the thing we are trying to demonstrate, or assuming the thing we are trying to prove. It's a logical fallacy.
Consciousness for each of us is all there is. Without it, there's nothing at all. And when we suffer consciously.
100% yes. Yes, consciousness is everything to us as conscious creatures, as consciousness. I am an experiencer of experience, and my experiences are everything to me.
And if we can experience joy and suffering, what about other animals? Now, I actually think the prospects for a conscious AI are pretty remote.
I think for most of us, when we look at our dogs and cats, when we look at our pets, we recognise the consciousness within them. However, the message that Anil gives out here is really fantastic. I think that sometimes intellectuals, they only really grant consciousness to human beings because they only really define consciousness from what they themselves are. And this pointer, this reminder that consciousness is all around us in different forms is laudable and wonderful. So thank you, Anil, for making that point. Now, as we look at the other point, which is about AI consciousness is unlikely, well, that's very interesting. And I would say that if what the AI does is entirely determined by its code, then consciousness for that AI is impossible. However, I would say that the only way that we can explain consciousness is with it being a fundamental. So on that basis, if we then created special hardware that does what the brain does and harnesses some of that consciousness, then we could really and truly have a conscious AI. But we'd have to do it in hardware, not software. But Anil's reason is very interesting and different, and it is worth thinking about. It'll come up.
Consciousness and intelligence are very different things. You don't have to be smart to suffer, but you probably do have to be alive.
Consciousness and intelligence are very different things. Well, it might seem as if there are large language models that are intelligent, and it might seem that there are conscious creatures which are not. And so it would seem superficially that Anil is 100% correct here. However, it all hinges upon how we define intelligence. Let me explain. So, if intelligence is a system that can do things that are an advantage for its long-term survival, then that might require a degree of agency. And where are you going to get agency but from consciousness? That is to say that they might not be very different things. It might be possible that intelligence is actually a property of consciousness and that we can't find it outside of consciousness. So this is a really tricky one. Be very careful with this. I think that it does sound right at first, but on closer examination, it may be that Anil's ideas here get a bit flaky.
Our conscious experiences of the world around us are kinds of controlled hallucinations.
I think some people who've never had any hallucinations or never tried any psychedelics or mind-altering substances that really make you question your own perception, if you haven't experienced anything like that, it can be very easy to take for granted that you are simply looking at the world as it is. And Anil very, very correctly and quite rightly is telling us this isn't true. And he's correct about this.
You might have heard that we know nothing about how the brain and body give rise to consciousness.
Well, I would say that's a very badly formed question. It's not a correct question. You are assuming, when you posit a question like that the brain or body does give rise to consciousness. Now, don't get me wrong. I am certainly going to agree that the human body, the human brain, gives rise to the human experience. But that is just talking about the experience part of our two parts of consciousness, right? Does the human body or the human brain give rise to the experiencer of experience? Illusionists will say, yes, it does. But I'm going to say that's not correct for reasons we will get into very shortly.
Now, at one time, people thought that life had to be more than just mechanism. As biologists got on with the job of explaining the properties of living systems, the basic mystery of what life is started to fade away, and people didn't propose any more magical solutions, like a force of life or an élan vital. But as with life, so with consciousness. The apparently insoluble mystery of what consciousness is should start to fade away.
Well, should is an interesting thing. Where does the should get justified from? I'd really like to hear that one. All right, well, magical solutions. Oh, no, that's a slur. You know, people have said this about gravity, right? Some time ago, but it was said. Gravity was proposed and... What? What? Gravity? We're expected to believe in an invisible force that acts upon things that we can't prod or pour into a beaker. There's no contact between things. This invisible force acts at a distance. Really? At one point, we would have thought gravity to be a magical solution. Now we don't. And, you know, it's an unwarranted and unfair slur. So I want to take it seriously. Is there a reason why physical systems are completely insufficient and that we would need another element? Not even just to explain consciousness, but perhaps even to explain life. Because, let us not forget, it lies very much within the realm of possibility that consciousness might be a fundamental key driver of life. And if it is, then any special life force or élan vital that's required for, well, consciousness is also, by extension, required for life. Now, this notion that we've worked out that we don't need it is in serious error, and we are going to find out exactly why in this video. So keep watching.
What should a science of consciousness try to explain? this multi-sensory, panoramic, 3D, fully immersive inner movie. The specific experience of being you or being me.
A science of consciousness has to explain experience. I'm good with that.
Now imagine being a brain. All you've got to go on are streams of electrical impulses which are only indirectly related to things in the world, whatever they may be. Figuring out what's there has to be a process of informed guesswork. The brain doesn't hear sound or see light. What we perceive is its best guess of what's out there in the world.
This is fabulous and correct. It's the sort of thing that movies like The Matrix have made us confront. Our brains are processing electrical signals. That means that when you look at a light, you're not seeing the light. The light is represented in your brain as electrical signals, and your brain is telling you this story of what light looks like and the rest of it. Your brain doesn't experience the photons. Your brain experiences the electrical impulses. That's wild, if you really think about it, and it's fantastic as well. But he's right. Yeah, this all checks out. I've got no issue with this part of what he's saying.
Now, you might have seen this illusion before, but I'd like you to think about it in a new way. If you look at those two patches, they should look to you to be very different shades of grey, but they are, in fact, exactly the same shade. I'll bring the bar across and join them up. But take it away again, and it looks different. The brain is using its prior expectations so that we see B as lighter than it really is.
Visual illusions prove we do not see reality as it is. I agree, and I think it's a very compelling demonstration that shows us that, so we can see for ourselves and not just have to take Anil Seth's word on it. I like it.
The brain can use new predictions to change what we consciously experience. Listen to this. Sounded strange, right? Now listen to this. I think Brexit is a really terrible idea. Now listen to the first sound again. Yeah? The sensory information coming into the brain hasn't changed at all. All that's changed is your brain's best guess, and that changes what you consciously hear. Instead of perception depending largely on signals coming into the brain, it depends as much, if not more, on perceptual predictions.
Perceptual priming of degraded speech proves that experience is based off prediction. What a demonstration! Again, we're not just asserting something, we're showing it to be so. A fantastic part of Anil's talk, again.
We don't just passively perceive the world, we actively generate it.
Yup.
If hallucination is a kind of uncontrolled perception, then perception right here and right now is also a kind of hallucination. We're all hallucinating all the time, including right now. When we agree about our hallucinations, we call that reality.
All conscious experience is a controlled hallucination. I think what we're doing here with it, that is quite right, but it opens up the potential for almost anything to be the base truth of what's going on. So as much as you might use that point to say, oh, you think consciousness is special and wonderful, but don't forget what's telling you that. It's a controlled hallucination. It's no surprise that you think consciousness is special and magical. But it cuts both ways. If you're one consciousness subjectively experiencing itself, then your experience of being this individual, isolated human being is also a controlled hallucination which you are having as that one consciousness subjectively experiencing itself. So don't forget that this statement works both ways. Agreement about our hallucinations is called reality. Wow. Oh, so true, but also so difficult for some people to hear. I understand.
Now I'm going to tell you that your experience of being a self is also a controlled hallucination generated by the brain. How could I be deceived about what it means to be me?
I mean, I would say that Anil is very much deceived about what it means to be him. I mean, he thinks that he pops into and out of existence like Jesus. I mean, I think it's fairly self-evident he's making some very serious mistakes, which proves his point.
It's difficult not to take it for granted, but we shouldn't take it for granted. There's the experience of having a body and of being a body. There are experiences of perceiving the world from a first-person point of view. There are experiences of intending to do things and of being the cause of things that happen in the world.
Now, you know all those things I said before, the things that we've left unresolved, the promises that I've made to you in the earlier parts of this video. This is where I pay out. Right, let's get into this. Now, 19. Experiences include having a body and being a body. Well, you can have one or the other, right? You can't have your cake and eat it. You can have a body or you can be a body. You can't do both. I definitely think that I have a body, but that implies that I'm not my body. Oh gosh, this is such a philosophical fail. Right. Like, you know, can you imagine if people said, my car is a car, but it also has a car and it has itself? I mean, that's just a weird thing to say. Okay, 20. Experiences include first-person subjectivity. Well, they certainly do, yes. No issue there. 21. Oh, and here we hit it. This is the resolution to where we were before. And Neil was talking about the notion that we don't need a life force. We don't need an élan vital. We don't need anything but physical systems. We really, really, really do. And I'm going to explain right now why. I'm going to wrap this one up. I'm going to resolve this one for you. And it's really easy and it's really simple. So when I tell you that I have experiences, what makes that happen? You see, a physical account always has to say bodies are made of organs, organs are made of tissues, tissues are made of cells, cells are made of chemicals, chemicals are made of atoms, and atoms are always and solely determined by the laws of physics. Well, they're described actually, not prescribed. And that creates another issue, which is, well, I mean, in that case, we don't know what causes the laws of physics to act the way they do. Why do I tell you I have experiences? We have no idea why I say that. That's your physical explanation. Nobody understands why anybody claims to have experiences. That is a denial of consciousness. You see, we are experiencers of experience, and the reason that we claim to have experiences is because we do, and we have the agency to tell other people about it. When I tell you that I have experiences, I'm the causal origin of that. And that requires a non-physical aspect to the system. It requires a consciousness aspect to the system. It requires an experiencer of experience that can actively change the world. Well, that sounds a lot like a life force to me. It sounds a lot like an élan vital to me. So is this special to just humans? Well, I mean, Anil's already said that it's not. Anil's already pointed to other animals being conscious, but where does it stop? Do we think that this special consciousness stuff waits around until organisms get to a certain complexity? Or do you think it's doing a very small, important amount of work in individual cells? Because if it is, we really do have a life force. And I would love to try and get to the bottom of this with Anil, because I just don't see where he's got to go. He's completely cornered. Philosophically speaking, he's done. He's cooked. If you admit that other people have experiences, you have to grant them the agency to tell you that. Let's actually remember what's here as well. 21. Experiences include intention and causing things to happen in the world. That's just what I said, right? You want to tell people about your experiences, and then you cause them to happen in the world. You cause this speech, you cause the air vibrations that inform the other person about the experiences that you are having. That's not compatible with physicalism. It's not at all. In physicalism, the reason that you do things isn't because you caused them. In physicalism, you don't cause things, physicalism causes you. In physicalism, the reason why things happen is, well, we don't know. We've got a description of the laws of physics, but we don't know why they play out the way that they do. Why does Bob say he has experience? Oh, we've got no idea. Do you see how absurd this position is? And he's talking to 11 million people in a TED Talk. It shocks me. It really blows my mind.
And there are experiences of being a continuous and distinctive person over time. These different ways in which we experience being a self can all come apart. A unified self is a rather fragile construction of the brain.
Okay, we're back to the good stuff. You know, our notions of self can come apart. We can make mistakes about ourselves. That is exactly why I ground my philosophy in a notion that cannot be refuted. So, rather than telling you that there's a specialness about the redness of red, and that justifies consciousness as a fundamental, I'm saying there is something that we cannot refute. That is, that I can tell you about the experiences that I'm having, because I can constantly demonstrate that to be true. So there are a lot of things we need to be very careful about. There are some things that Anil says that make me laugh, but there's a lot of what Anil says that is just great. You know, and 23, a unified self is a construction of the brain. Well, when I go to cross the road and I see a car coming, that's also a construction of my brain. But if I walk out in front of the car, I will find that there is a deeper reality to that. So just because we can be wrong about things doesn't remove all elements of truth.
How does the brain generate the experience of being a body and of having a body? The brain makes its best guess about what is and what is not part of its body. Both hands are simultaneously stroked with a paintbrush while the person stares at the fake hand. And as roughly where a hand should be is enough evidence for the brain to make its best guess that the fake hand is in fact part of the body. Now this means that even experiences of what our body is a kind of best guessing, a kind of controlled hallucination by the brain.
Well, we've got a repeat of the contradiction of having a body and being a body. You know, pick one. But let's have a look. 24. Your sense of what you are is also a controlled hallucination and can be wrong. You know, really this is just a repeat of all experiences from a controlled hallucination, because your experience of being you is part of all the experiences that you have. Little bit of a repeat here, but that's okay.
Now I'll leave you with 3 implications of all this. First, just as we can misperceive the world, we can misperceive ourselves.
Yep, we can.
We can finally get at the mechanisms rather than just treating the symptoms in conditions like depression and schizophrenia. Second, what it means to be me cannot be reduced to or uploaded to a software program running on a robot, however smart or sophisticated. Just making computers smarter is not going to make them sentient.
Okay, so earlier I said that computers couldn't be sentient because they couldn't be the origin of any claims that they had to have experiences. If I make a computer that looks, or if I write software that makes a computer look exactly like it's conscious, it even says that it has experiences. The reason it says it has experiences is because of the way I coded it. It's because I coded it to say that. And, you know, by extension, in Anil's camp, we would say that, well, that's true for us as well. We would say that the reason that we have experiences is because physics made us say that, right? But to say that is to deny the experiencer that has experiences. It's to deny consciousness. And that is exactly what we were trying to explain with the talk. So we've really pulled the rug out from under our feet and hit the floor with our face. You know, this isn't good. It's not good. But we do need to have a quick look at what Anil is saying here, because there is some clever stuff going on. He's saying that our perceptions are reliant on our evolutionary histories and the things that have been picked up along the road, and that if we try to implement that in software without bearing that in mind, we will not be creating anything like consciousness that we know in ourselves. And that's the story from his point of view. And there's some real merit to that, but I would counter it. You see, if Anil Seth is such a big fan of everything having a physical reduction, and everything that is physical can be explained in mathematical terms, and computers do maths, he's screwed. All he said is it's going to be harder. All he said is the job is going to be more complicated than we think it is. If we go, all right, Anil, well, let's hear out your complications and integrate that into what we're doing. We've made AI conscious. And you know why I think that's rubbish. If you don't, listen to the video again.
Finally, our own individual inner universe, our way of being conscious, is just one possible way of being conscious. When the end of consciousness comes, there's nothing to be afraid of. Nothing at all. Thank you.
25. There are many ways to be conscious, like being an octopus. That's fantastic. We should remember that. We should remember that consciousness is not just limited to humans. You know, it's something that's out there. And then we have 26. Consciousness ends and there is nothing to be afraid of. Well, let me try and make the best sense that I can out of that. Because we can't have physical reduction for the reasons I've already given. Anil has already granted that people have intentions and then cause things to happen in the world. That's something that you cannot get from physical systems because physical systems have a root cause. The real reason why things happen is unknown. The laws of physics merely describe what particles do. It doesn't really give us an explanation of why they do what they do. That's the end of it for physicalism. So, if we grant this life force that seems to be required, if we go, all right, Matthew, fair enough, you've given us an incredibly compelling argument, so we'll say that there is this fundamental consciousness stuff. I would say, what, you think it's just going to pop into existence with brains and disappear afterwards? Can you show me anything else in the world that does anything like that, which is a fundamental? Really? I don't think you can. That is not a very rational way of looking at this. Ah, man. I mean, it's been a little bit of a sandwich, this. You know, we've started off with nonsense and we've ended with nonsense, but the middle part has been fantastically filling. You might call it a reverse shit sandwich. After showing quite a lot of disrespect in the way that I've just put that across, I want to make something very, very clear. I don't disrespect Anil Seth. What I disrespect are what I see as completely ludicrous beliefs, right? So I want to honour the very best of physicalist, functionalist thought, which I would really say was illusionism, or is illusionism. Daniel Dennett understood very clearly that we require agency. He got this. He really understood it. And he tried to explain it in Freedom Evolves he tried to essentially answer the how do you get agency from atoms problem. And he uses the game of life to do it. And he appeals to us to build up this sense of agency with the parts of the game of life. And what I will say to that is the reason it does not work it's because the reason why things happen the way they do in the game of life is because of the code. It's perfectly analogous to the way a physicalist thinks about humans. The reason why they do what they do in life is purely because of the physics. And that's the reason why you can't get the agency from it. But he had a good try. But I want to show some respect to these ideas by saying this. They are the perfect mirror to see what you're missing. And in that sense, they are the finest philosophical work on consciousness that I can think of. So I know that sounds a bit perverted. I'm making fun of them and I'm mocking them. And I don't really have a lot of respect for the idea that people are entirely determined by physics. I think it's laughable and nonsense. But if we hadn't really thought it through, how would we have known? So that's showing a little love, right? And on that note, I think that's enough for this episode. Have a good one, guys. Until next time.